Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this session today on CMMC 2.0 Outlook for 2022. We have a lot of folks that are participating in the meeting today, but in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new things that have been updated as it relates to CMMC. I have with me on this particular call our CEO, Sanjay Kumar, and our CTO, Chandi Bilagu, who will be helping answer any questions that you all have during the course of the presentation. And anything that questions you may have in regards to some product offerings that we have out here as well. So we wanted to start the session with a little bit of an update from yesterday's town hall meeting, very timely, as that was just conducted last night. We'll discuss a little bit around the current compliance requirements for you and those that are part of this ecosystem. The changes, again, that have been proposed and what that means. And then, really what remains and what should your company or your organization be doing to prepare for this process. We're also going to talk a little bit about how we've adapted tools to help meet the current requirements and, of course, the future requirements that you'll have when the accreditation process or the new CMMC process starts. And then also cover a little bit about our platform, some of the tools that can be very beneficial and useful to you in helping prepare yourself, and then of course getting yourself ready for whatever you may need to do as a participant in this ecosystem. We have a lot of participants here today, so we know that some of you are probably OSCs or organizations that will be seeking accreditation, and then as well as a number in the ecosystem that are RPOs that are helping service you to get you prepared as well. And from a SureShield perspective, we have solutions that can help in all of those manners. Just a brief note, the content from this presentation will be shared with you if there's any questions in regards to that. We will also be sharing the audio or the webinar presentation. This particular presentation will also be made available to you. And for those who you may want to forward that on to. And then we'll also, at the conclusion of the session during the questions, we will provide a brief poll to allow you to indicate if there's an interest in potentially trialing or utilizing some of our tools. And you will be followed up accordingly in regards to that. So let's go ahead and get started. And I just wanted to provide a little brief update from yesterday's CMMC 2.0 town hall meeting, or the town hall updates that took place yesterday. And pulling out just a couple of bullets that were relevant to those of you here in that update. As many of you may know, back in December, they did release the new level 1 and level 2 kind of assessment guidelines. And what also came along with that were new numbering conventions. So remembering that really the foundational go forward with this will continue to work off of the NIST 800-171. What they have done is taken the previous CMMC numbering conventions and the current NIST numbering conventions and combine those. So when I go in and show you how we've already updated our tools to see this, you'll see the difference in terms of what would be considered the numbering conventions. They are indicating that they are pushing to begin the first set of assessments this quarter. There's still a couple of other things that need to get approved to do that, but they're moving quite aggressively to make sure that is available, so that for those of you that want to begin the process of going through an assessment, you'll be able to do that with some providers, hopefully by the beginning of Q1. They also indicated that there's an expectation. In the last session that we had, they talked about contract incentives for those who are going to get involved in the process, even with it not having been finalized perhaps yet. And there was strong indication that those contract incentives to complete those assessments will be released shortly. So there will be some incentives for you to participate. They also plan on finalizing the new POAM requirements. As you recall, there was an indication at one time that maybe a POAM would not be needed in the previous CMMC 1.0 process. It will still be available in the 2.0. However, they're going to restrict the number of controls that can actually go into a POAM. So you'll know ahead of time what you absolutely have to have in place before you can even begin this process and what you'll want to have in place before you do that. And that will be released shortly. They've also indicated that they will be releasing the new CMMC assessment process. And this is basically a document that is going to outline both for the OSCs and for those that are the C3PAOs that will be conducting these accreditation assessments, what they kind of the standardized planned process of this will be, so that everybody is kind of working off a same playbook. And that playbook we should expect to see out here probably within the next 2 weeks. And that will help everybody that's involved in the ecosystem kind of understand what the rules of the game will be and moving forward. And they also said, cleared up some questions in regards as to, do we need to be starting this process? Absolutely, you should be doing this. Obviously, you already have current requirements to do that through the NIST 800-171. That has not changed. So this is not something that necessarily should be delayed. You should be doing things to help understand what's coming and begin a process of doing your own self-assessments or working with RPOs or providers that can help you get prepared, because it is going to come. And they also, really emphasize that need for good policies and good documentation, meaning if you are indicating that you are in compliance with something, you're going to need to have that good supporting evidence to back up that. So just kind of a rehash in terms of where we're at today. Obviously, CMMC is going to come. It's on its way. There is a finalization process for the final rule. But I think it's safe to say, having done the changes that they've already done to the 1.0, there really will not be any intent to make any further modifications, at least to the maturity levels that have now been put in place. And we'll touch on that briefly. But as many of you know, currently all providers working with the DoD do need to complete a NIST 800-171 assessment. They need to submit those scores to the Supplier Performance Risk System, the SPRS. And if they are not 100% in compliance, that has to be supported with the System Security Plan and a POAM, or a Plan of Action and Milestone report. All those need to be part of the process currently today. Of course, it does have a little bit of an impact on those of you determining what level of CUI data you're working with, but it is a requirement for all current agreements. And as I mentioned, there will be incentives for new agreements coming out. Just a kind of a rehash of what took place back in November. As we know, they streamlined the model and reduced the maturity levels from 5 to 3. They've eliminated the CMMC only controls and focusing on NIST. And as I mentioned, they've done almost kind of a hybrid combination of the control numbering, but everything is following the NIST 800-171 kind of requirements. It will allow for self-assessments for contracts without information critical to the national security. And that means that for some of those of you that are a level 1, or those of you who may be at a level 2, where you are handling COI data that they're not deeming to be critical, you will be able to do a self-assessment. However, they're going to add more teeth to that. It's going to require an executive of the organization who signs off on this. And, certainly reiterating the importance of that being fully backed up and validated, because there could potentially even be some issues with false claims if something was submitted that turned out not to be the case. And as I mentioned before, they will allow for a POAM, but it's going to be reduced in terms of what can go on that POAM, and it's also going to be time bound. So the new process is expected to be fully, I would say, certified by the DoD within the next 9 to 24 months. However, that does not eliminate or reduce the need to obviously do what needs to be done today, and also to focus on the fact that this is coming and you should be doing the necessary to get prepared. And lastly, beyond the compliance issues, as we know, there continues to be an even heightened increase in cyber attacks. Literally, we're almost at a cyber war with the number of nations that are adversarial to us. And that doesn't, go to say the criminal natures of folks trying to get in and hack and get at our data. So regardless of the timing, it's extremely important for the health of your own business to have good cyber posture and good cyber hygiene. And of course, that will impact what you need to put into place based upon the type of services or type of things that you are providing ultimately to those of you who are servicing the DIB. So as we mentioned, they went from 5 levels down to 3. Your level 1 is still what we would call that basic cyber hygiene level. There are 17 practices associated with that level 1. It's going to require in the future a annual self-assessment. When I say that, annual, so every single year you will need to be submitting an update as to where you are with this. So you're going to obviously need to regularly do continuous auditing on your systems, as things can obviously change. Your businesses change over time. So will the abilities to sometimes assure that you are in compliance with those. At the level 2, this is now those of you who will be managing what's deemed as CUI or data. And for those of you who are doing that, you will need to be assessed at the level 2. That does follow the NIST 800-171 guidelines. And again, depending on how critical that data is deemed, you'll either need to go through a C3PAO assessment, or accreditation process, or you'll have to go through an annual self-assessment for select programs. And then lastly, at the highest level, there will be triennial government-led assessments. However, many of the C3PAOs will be working with those organizations at that level to get them prepared and to go through that process, and then passed on to this government oversight body. So what hasn't changed, and what should you be doing as an organization? As we talked about before, CMMC will be implemented. It's going to happen. The only change is going to be to the process somewhat. There were discussions about getting a number of the RPOs that were in the system, that if any of those that have already gone through kind of their initial 1.0 certification process are going to be grandfathered to be updated on the new learning tools. But keep in mind, if you had gone through any of that process in the past, all those things will still be in place. The only thing is that there may be some things that are taken out. So if you have gone through the process already, it's good, because what you learned, all you're going to need to do is probably, relieve a little bit of the extra burden on some of these. You're still required to submit a NIST 800-170 score to the SPRS. So you should be regularly conducting these assessments. It's going to be required yearly, and you're going to need to update and create your POAM and SSP. These are things you should be doing right now and are going to be necessary in the future. As it relates to the new process, it's very important that you really kind of dig in and do a proper review of your systems to determine what levels you believe you're going to be assessed at. Are you going to be a level 1, a level 2? Many of you may know this, but there's some that still have, particularly if they think they're at level 1s, not full clarity on whether you're handling CUI data or not. Clearly, if you have any documents that have been marked CUI that you've received in the course of an agreement or a contract that you're operating under, that is, that you have it. While the government has enforced and says this, oftentimes a lot of us are not even receiving those proper markings. So, deeming what you, in some case, be critical information is important. And, then you'll either have to, so it's important you locate and evaluate your CUI and make sure you have proper controls around that. And lastly, cybersecurity hardening continues to be a critical ongoing requirement. What do I mean by that? If you aren't already, and most of you probably are, it's very, very important that you're at least initially and ongoing doing what you would call vulnerability assessment, scans, and remediations. These will, there's two components to this. Having vulnerabilities oftentimes will indicate that you are not in compliance with a control as it relates to NIST 800-171 or CMMC. And obviously there's a compliance issue for that. More importantly, you have a significant security issue if you are identifying vulnerabilities. Think of it as cracks or holes that could allow the wrong people to get in and do bad things. And so it's really important to have an assessment, a regular vulnerability scans done, and then have processes, whether you do those on your own or whether you do those from good solid MSPs or RPOs that have the services to help you with this, to go in, identify, and most importantly, remediate and improve your cyber posture. So all those things, a lot of the requirements, regardless whether CMMC has been held off a little bit in terms of its final, I would say approval activation, all of these things need to be done today. And it's even more important and critical today because it's not just a compliance issue, it's a significant security issue given the degrees of attacks that continue to escalate. So how have we adapted? And we're going to go in and show you already the changes that we have made to our processes. One thing, given the fact that we're quite nimble as a company, even in the past level 1 through level 5, if anybody was working with our tools to help them in that process, all of that is not for waste, because it will all be mapped back to the current new 2.0 level 1, level 2, level 3 requirements. So we modified our compliance assessment tools to the new CMMC level 1 and level 2 requirements. The level 3 have not yet been out, but we're fully prepared for that because it's just an extension of additional controls off of the NIST 800-172, which we at SureShield already have. It's just a matter in understanding what controls from that will be added to it. We've adapted the new control numbering conventions, and I will show that to you. We've added a lot of new supplemental guidance content to simplify compliance documentation. We'll show you that and how our tools can help you really very easily understand what you need to do to make sure that you're in compliance with a particular control. We modified the crosswalk to accommodate CMMC 1 and 2 controls to current NIST 800-171 controls. What's important about that is that we allow you to do one thing one time and not have to duplicate work. So whether you're assessing yourself at a level 1 or level 2, or whether you are just going to continue right now to use a NIST 800-171 assessment, either way, we have tools that provide crosswalks that will automatically map that data to the respective control sets. So there's no need to do any additional work. And we've further enhanced our what we call our security scanning tools to do a couple of things. One, to help automate some compliance requirements, control requirements, meaning we can do certain scans that can indicate whether you are not in compliance with a particular control, so it automates that process. But we've also extended it to include what we call the CISA known exploits. For those of you who may or may not be familiar, CISA is a government entity that puts out regular updates that are shared not only with the government, but also with the private sector on critical cyber issues and areas of vulnerabilities. They base those primarily on how risky they are, how prevalently they've been exposed in the environments, and also lastly, providing a remediation process to it. It's a subset, if you would think about it, of a full-on vulnerability scan. And what we've done is included that CISA known exploits, and we make that available to the customers who are using our tools to see what exploits you may have and then how to fix those. So how can we help your company? Obviously, we mentioned we have a crosswalk tool. You can conduct one assessment and harmonize across so that you're prepared today and in the future. We provide a continuous vulnerability scanning tools, as I mentioned, integrated with the compliance framework. We have software that can help you identify CUI data in your environment. Obviously, you're going to need to know to help you understand maturity levels. And we generate all of the current and what will be the future reports that will be required. Those include the NIST assessment compliance score that needs to be submitted today, and you can be assured that there will probably be a new one, or even modifications of the one that's in place, and all of that is currently and ready in place here at SureShield. And we provide those under the auspices of a number of different products. So I'm going to pause here briefly, and we're going to give a short preview of our tools that can help you and those of you that are in this process and will be conducting this process. So let me just pause here for a minute. And Sanjay, if you are on with me, can you confirm that you're able to see my dashboard?
Yes, I am, Tom.
And I don't know if you want to add anything before I go into this, but perhaps you can give just a quick brief overview of what this platform solution does, and then I'll go into showing a couple of the different navigation items.
Sure, Tom. So as Tom is actually going into the demonstration, a key thing to note is that the overall application is actually developed around the philosophy of management by exception. So as you can see, even from the dashboard, when you come into it, everything is color coded in terms of really alerting you of making you aware of things that need to be addressed either right away or things that you can basically address as you go along, or if you need to be worried at all or not. If everything is green, then there's no problems at all. But what Tom is also going to show you is some synergies that are there across all the harmonization that we have created across the different modules as well.
Yes, thanks, Sanjay. And just for a note for the different folks that are on, we have a lot of customers and a lot of clients that are in the DIB that are going to be, you know, OSCs that use our products directly. Obviously, they work with us and they use these tools. They have resources in place to do their assessments, to do vulnerability scans and the likes. And so they do purchase. We also work with a number of managed service and security service providers who leverage this technology and this platform to service their clients. And in that environment, they can obviously set up as many different clients as they want in one portal, and then be able to manage the services that they provide to them. So in this customer demo environment right now, just want to point out that we've this is specifically kind of showing right now for things related, at least on the control frameworks, to CMMC and NIST. However, this is our ComplyShield product actually has over 32 different frameworks that can be instantiated if you're a healthcare provider that has to do HIPAA, if you're working with CIS version 8, if you're an ISO related, all of those frameworks are here. And in all cases, what we've done is crosswalks. So where there are controls that are like in those different frameworks, we can crosswalk those so you don't have to do multiple work. So in this case, you're going to see, I'm first going to click on this dashboard that says it has 220 controls. The reason it mentions that is that we have activated this at the CMMC version 2 level 2 level, which is and then we've also instantiated the NIST 800-171. While they are theoretically the same controls, each one has 110, so that's why you see the number 220. But if I come into this, then you can see there's a lot of different ways in which I can filter on information. So if I just wanted to look at CMMC level 2 controls, I can filter on that. And just notice over here, you can see in this area that's called the control ID, you'll see that these new controls have the new numbering conventions. It's a component of the previous CMMCs, and then it's also a component of the NIST 800-171. So if I were to click off of this and click on NIST, then you're going to see the control ID that is different specifically for NIST. You'll also notice within here, if I wanted to, I can even filter down on the different levels that I may want to look at. So if I just was wanting to look at the new level 1s, as we recall, there are only 17 controls. And when I pull that up, it actually provides that information to me. So I do want to mention, when you have these controls or these frameworks initiated for you, you have a lot of different ways in which you can filter, move that data. And there's a lot of different ways you can also share the work as well. I'm not going to go into a lot of that. We will be, touching base with folks who are interested in learning more. But just rest assured that in something like this, I even have the ability. So in this case, I've filtered on the 17 level 1 controls. And if I actually wanted to move that work, maybe I'm going to do it all, or I'm going to send it to someone else to do. We have a lot of workflow components that are built in here that allow me to do things like get a request for response, to assign or those controls to someone else to answer for me. And then I have the ability to centrally manage and see, where we're at and where all that is. But it's as simple, and I'll make note to show you some of the other things that have been modified to make going through this process that much easier. If I were to just click into one of these controls, you're going to see it's going to give me the information on that control, what the citation is that is on that control. And you're also going to notice now there's a couple of different areas that can help me when it comes to full-on documentation. You'll have the ability to add comments. If I was actually going to mark this as compliant, you'll see that we even give you some comments that you can use and append to or add to that help validate your rationale for compliance with that particular control. You can upload evidence. Again, as they pointed out, you're going to need to have that documentation and information that will support why you have marked something compliant. You'll also note down here that we give a lot of guidance as well on how to understand how to comply with this. So there's practice guidance around that access control, implementation guidance. There's guidance and best practices that can be looked at, to help you understand how to meet this. We have policies and procedures that are attached to those controls. I will touch on that as well. We provide supplemental guidance, supporting evidences, and even questions that you can be asking or going through to help you in this process to make sure that you are meeting the requirements. So we really are trying to give you, a lot of strong supporting information to help you with your process in going through this. And ultimately what will be happening if and when you have to go through an audit or an assessment by a third party as well. Anytime that we're answering questions and updating this, because this is a continuous tool, all your response history will be documented and held on to. So you can see over the periods of time how things have changed with you, because again, this is a continuous process. I'm not going to save this. So again, the other things that we have in here in terms of when you have answered controls, as we mentioned before, CMMC level 2 and NIST essentially are the same. The only things that are different between them are numbering right now, and also slightly different processes in how questions are answered. There's still, for instance, 4 different response categories, but in the case of NIST, those response categories are implemented, addressed with the SSMP and POEM. It's an approved exception or it's not implemented. In the case of CMMC, it's slightly different in those responses, but we know where those mappings are and we map that information across. When I say we do that, in mapping those answers, it also maps and makes sure that you have all the supporting evidence and documentation that you've used in the past. And it's as simple as basically going to an area here that says sync your NIST 171 and CMMC. If you click this button, it will pull up and show you where those mappings are, and then you basically click a button that says sync and it will sync up your answers. So again, no need for you to do any additional work around that. And you can see with other tools that we have as well, we have synchronizations and control crosswalks that are in place, depending upon the frameworks you're working with. I also want to point out briefly as we come out into here, that within our system, we also provide you a set of policies. So as they mentioned, you need to have supporting documentation, which includes policies and then validation backup. So our system and tools come pre-packaged with policies. And as you go in and begin to answer your questions, you can also come into these to see amongst those policies where you may have issues with non-compliance around controls, because things like access controls can be impacting several different control areas. And so it will show you, for instance, what areas you have You have compliant controls and what areas you may have non-compliant controls or unanswered. And all I have to do is go into there and it will take me to that particular question. The reason, again, that there are, I believe, 36 is because we have them for both CMMC and for NIST. But if I were just to go in and look at the NIST policies, again, because they're similar, you're really not dealing with two sets. But if I were to open these up, there's a couple of different things that we allow. We provide our customers a prepackaged set of policies that are mapped to all these controls already. And they are updated and customized for our customers as well, with their logos, with their names. Now you have the ability to either append these. If you do edit, it will go ahead and save any edit history, so you know when things have been updated. You can also, if you already have your own in place, you can upload those policies and override these. And the beauty is that they are already mapped to the controls. You can also go ahead and download these into Word, and you can output those policies to review and make any changes you may want to make to them and bring them back into the system. These all come as a component and prepackaged with our solution. I'm going to go back to the dashboard briefly and just point out a couple of other things that we have in here. As I mentioned as well, in this demo example, this client is also using our scanning utility. It's a very simple, easy to deploy utility. It's a web-enabled utility that gets deployed. It goes out and it identifies all your IPs within your network, as well as the ability to do external, internet-facing applications you may be working with. It will scan those, and it acts like I call it a friendly hacker, meaning it's going to identify where you have holes in your system. It's going to tell you where they are, what they are, and most importantly, how to fix them. And if you note here, you can see one of the subsets we, as I mentioned before, is we do have those CISA known exploits. So we can also hone in and help you identify what exploits you may have, what the level of severity is with those, and how to fix those. But this is just different views in these other tiles into that setting. So in this customer example, they have 272 host assets. Basically, those can be servers, computers, and the likes. And running on those particular computers and servers and the likes are over 3,000 different software assets. And amongst those, this is for purposes of this example, it's a pretty big client. They have over 10,000 vulnerabilities. And what we provide here is the ability to also understand within there how to go about the remediation processes. But if I wanted to just click into these briefly, let's just say I wanted to look at the ones that had the most, needed the most urgent attention. It will tell me what those are. It will tell me what that IP is. It will tell me what the vulnerabilities are on that. Again, you have a lot of different ways to filter that information. And then most importantly, if I were to go in and look at that vulnerability, this may be one. You can see it will even show changes over time. So if you're running regular assets, it will show you the differentials on what has happened on that particular asset. And most importantly, it will actually go in and also tell you what needs to be done to remediate and cure that vulnerability. So you can see here, it's showing me different times and natures that this has been run. What are the vulnerabilities that are on here? And then if I were to go into this further, it will tell me specifically what the process is to remediate this. So, and of course, that's extremely important because that then helps you fix the problems you have. I'm going to wind this up in just a minute, but just go ahead and also point out to you other solutions we have in here. We have a solution called SureShield that allows you to identify critical information. So it's a tool that can help identify CUI data. We have a dark web monitoring tool that can help you understand if you've had any external threats already. And everybody is subject to 889B monitoring. This is a tool that can help make sure that you are not working with any banned Chinese companies that the government under the McCain Act does not allow you to work with. Particularly relates to those that have video surveillance, telecommunication types of equipment in here. But with our, most importantly, in having this information, you then also have the ability, of course, to report on all of this information. So if I were to go into the ComplyShield reports, you'll see that we have a variety of different compliance reports. So again, as I mentioned, this is a continuous process. You can run these reports at any time to see where you stand. So you can see here, I have the ability to go ahead and run this, whether it's on the new CMMC level 2, level 1, or if I want to run it on a report on compliance from my NIST compliance. All of that is already there and built into the system. I can set the date ranges, the times that I want to look at this, and then the actions I can see of where I want to be on this if I were to run this report. And it outputs this in nice, fashion that you can also convert to Word or convert to a PowerPoint or use the graphs for different types of PowerPoint demonstrations. You can schedule these reports. You can have these saved. You can have them scheduled to go out to different people within your organization. And it will also show you differentials on changes that have taken place when you've enacted areas where you have gaps. Tons of different ways in which to report on this information. We also come prepackaged with you all of the current DFARS reporting requirements. So under the current requirements, you know that you have to submit an assessment score. That also includes the need to provide the SSP and the POAM. So our system, when you're doing a compliance assessment, will also allow you, if you are going in a current version, going to put something on a POAM, you can indicate while you're looking at that assessment if it's going to be addressed by a POAM. You can also indicate your timing as to when it will get fixed and what you will be doing to get it fixed, and all of that will translate onto your POAM report. So you don't need to update and change those as well. But as you know, many of you may know, the NIST assessment score at full completion, I believe, is at a score of 110. Chandi, you can validate that for me if you'd like. But if you are in full compliance, then you would be submitting an assessment score that's at a score of 110. Each control has an aggregate score that has been set for it. So when they're in compliance, that ups your score. If it hasn't been addressed or it's not in compliance, that score will change. So you can see here at this particular point in time, this particular customer is scoring at a score of 62, which means that they either have some areas of non-compliance or they have some things that are not addressed. And they can then go ahead and look into this score to show where those defaults are. If I were to go back and now after running my initial assessment, identified areas where I'm making improvements, I've brought the documentation, I've done the right things to now change it to a compliance score, I would change that, and then this score in itself would change as well. Again, pointing to it being a continuous running assessment tool for you. So all of those are part of the program to help you meet your current requirements as well as your future requirements. You also have, excuse me, various types of security reports. Again, as we mentioned, there will always be vulnerabilities. There's always going to be new things introduced. It's not something that should be done as a one and done. Anyone that's handling critical information really should at a minimum be doing vulnerability scans and assessments on a monthly basis. And our tools allow you to do that and schedule that whenever you want to. But of course, when you run those, then you want to have a lot of different good reports that you have to present to management, to look at where what you can take to help support gaps and things that need to get closed. So there's a variety, the same way, a lot of different reports. I'm just going to point out a couple that are really super beneficial. You can see here, I'm wanting to look at a top remediation report that will help me, understand, for instance, what are the top 20 remediations that I can take. You can see, again, a lot of different ways you can filter information to run on the report, to run the different types of reports you may want to run. But perhaps I want to get a good understanding of what are, because everybody has a certain amount of limited resources and time. I'm running a top 20 remediation report. And I get this summary report that comes out as an example that will tell me what are those areas of critical nature, high nature, that if I were to apply, in this case, based upon the information I have, 20 remediations on 161 of my hosts, I would remediate almost 92, almost 93% of those vulnerabilities. And I would reduce my risk profile within here by close to 100%. I could bring that down to 10, I could bring that down to 50. And again, it will show you in nice graphical meanings, not only what percentage of risk it will mitigate, but even what the time is going to be to complete those remediations. And where might be, what might be considered that break-even area for you as well. So tons of different reports that you have available in here. And again, while security and running these are important regardless of whether you are going to go through the CMMC or you're in the DIB right now, but more importantly, it's something that needs to be done. And with both the NIST and the CMMC requirements, one of those requirements is that you are running regular vulnerability scans and you are applying appropriate remediation processes to those. So again, tools that can help you with that. So I'm going to pause and go back to the presentation briefly. And Sanjay, if you can tell me if you are seeing the presentation.
Yes, Tom.
And Chandi, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add briefly in terms of some of the changes that we've made to accommodate all the new the CMMC level 1 and level 2 changes with the solution. I'll open that up to you briefly before we open this now up to questions.
You addressed all of that quite well, Tom. I don't have anything more to add.
Okay, so with that, obviously the system is coming. We can help you in terms of lowering your overall security risk, help you get faster to implementing and closing gaps so that you're ready today to be secure on the contracts that you have today, as well as to help you be prepared for the future. And for those that want to get even further out, ahead of this, keeping in mind that doing this and beginning this process, they are going to give incentives to those that are going through the process. So with that, we're going to offer, well, before we open this up, open up to questions, just reiterating that CMMC 2.0 is moving forward. The new assessment levels are in place. You're still required to do NIST, and there's going to be more teeth to that in terms of the sign-offs. And while there's a number of things you need to do, technology like that provided by us can help make this process more efficient, more effective, more safe for you. And certainly you should be looking at tools that can help you with that. So we're going to take a brief poll, and then we'll go ahead and open up this for questions. As I mentioned, at the, as one of the last items of this is, for those of you who may be interested in trialing any or all of our solutions, we're going to take a brief poll and ask you if you would like to do that. And then let's go ahead. We'll keep the poll open until we conclude the session. Sanjay and Chandi, are you seeing the poll?
Yes.
Yes, Tom.
Okay, thank you. And then please, for those of you who are participating, go to the Q&A area and please ask your questions. And I don't, in the gentlemen's folks who are on, I see that there's quite a few. Chandi and Sanjay, can again, can you validate that everyone is able to see other people's questions?
That's right. Everybody can see and we answer them all.
Okay, so everyone should also have the ability to see the answers to those questions. If there are more of interest, please go ahead and ask some of those questions as well in the Q&A. And I have one that that others have asked in the past that have to do with how, should we be interested in using these tools? How are they priced? There are, discounts for use of multiple products, but also want to point out the compliance solution. We base that on the activated frameworks. So think of, if I were doing CMMC and let's say HIPAA, that would be considered two different frameworks. In our case, we are offering, for those of you who want to leverage the CMMC and NIST, we are packaging that as one framework. So you get all that you need, but only at the price of one. It's a fairly nominal price. It's a, roughly, without any discounts, about $1,400 a year. So very, very inexpensive to help you be prepared to do that. And that's for utilizing the tool. Our scanning solutions are based upon the number of assets that need to be scanned and then the time period in which they're doing that. So in any given month, you can scan as often as you like. If, let's say, you only wanted to do a scan every other month, you could run, let's just say, 100 of them in 1 month. You would only be charged the cost of running that once in that month. And then should you not do it the following months, there's no charges. Again, so we have a lot of folks that will actually, if they don't have the ability to do this on a more regular monthly or even more current basis, they'll do runs at the beginning of the month, and then they'll do see where they need to do remediations, do those remediations, run it at the end, and see how their profiles have changed. Really super helpful to them. So if there's interest in learning more about pricing, and for those of you that have indicated an interest on trialing these tools, we'll also be following up with you to help you understand that as well. So Chandi and Sanjay, I know you guys have gone ahead on and answered questions. Are there any in particular that were proposed by the folks here that you want to reiterate any more on?
Yeah. So one of the questions was the vulnerability scanning. So what kind of technology we use?
Okay.
So I can explain that more. So we actually have an expose from Rapid7 as the backend technology, and we have a lot of enhancements done to that to make it cloud enabled, so that there's a lot of automation that makes it easy for a non-security experts to use the tool. Because most of these vulnerability scanners are meant for practitioners, and we make it a lot easier to not have that dependency. And the reports and the results, as Tom has shown, is very easy for anybody to understand and make the remediation so that you are secure in your environment.
Excellent. Yes, so as Chandi mentioned, what we've taken is a best in breed and we've enhanced on top of it, making it web enabled, doing a lot more in terms of helping understand remediations around that, not just identifying the vulnerabilities, but doing the remediation processes. And then of course, outputting a lot of different reports that can be used to help you understand what your risk profiles look like. We've additionally, as we also mentioned, integrated that across other solutions like our compliance solution. So when we run a scan, we can help understand where there might be compliance related issues, and we will default those questions on that compliance, on your overall compliance score, so that you can go and see what the source of that was, and then whether you need to make changes or whether you need, what you need to do to help get that score in compliance. So I see we had another question. And the question was, what is SPRS? The SPRS is a supplier performance system. It's a tool of that the DoD has for reporting the information on your assessment scores, as long as your POAMs and your SSP. And I know that we've had, I can send out to the person who asked that some previous questions about how you go about that. Some of our previous webinars have provided information on what the process is for registering and then submitting to that group. Chandi, there's a question about whether this can be used to support ISO 9000.
Yeah, I was just answering. We don't today because most of our focus is in the information technology, governance, risk, and compliance. And ISO 9000 is more a quality framework, and it requires a different kind of instrumentation. So we haven't taken up that exercise yet. So we don't have it right now. We may have it in the future.
Great. Thank you for that question. I know we're getting close to the end of the session, about another 2 minutes. So with that, and there's one other question here, Chandi.
Yes, we do. Yeah, ISO 27001. Yes, we do. All kinds of security, IT security frameworks we address. Even if we don't have, we can add very quickly.
Yes. So to the question about ISO
27,000.
Yes, 27,001. We do have those frameworks available. So again, please reach out to us. I'm going to close the poll here shortly. So if any of you want to further indicate an interest in receiving some free trials, I see that there's quite a few that I have requested that. Over half the folks that are here right now are requesting, and then a number of you are indicating there may be an interest later. So that's great. And it's great to see that there's hardly anyone that said no. So with that, again, you will be receiving a follow-up email from us. For those of you who have requested trials, please respond to that and we will get in touch with you to coordinate getting you set up. For those who are interested in perhaps later, please keep us in mind. All of you will continue, who are participating, will continue to receive periodic updates from us on things we're doing here. So should your needs perhaps change in the future, please reach out to us. And we will continue to update and anything that we're doing to help meet these requirements. We thank you all for your time today. And thank you particularly for those of you who are contracting and serving this group. We thank you for your service to our country, and we wish you the best in making sure that your environments are safe, and we are happy and look forward to helping you in any way we can to do that. So again, thank you all for your time, and hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.